All right, everyone, we start off today with a very interesting propagandistic piece here from the Washington Post that, unfortunately, it undermines the more grassroots shilling efforts of Biden's remaining fans with regards to something that's been on people's minds now for months, which is the Biden shortages. Of course, keep in mind, a lot of the shortage thing is state level. It's lockdown related. The problem is that Biden spent months pushing lockdownerism. It's just like when you look at the Omicron case totals, which are sky high. They're still rising. New York's got record cases everywhere else. It's technically not Biden's fault. That's because there is no federal solution. He's correct when he points that out. The problem for Biden is he painted himself into a corner, and I've pointed this out to people when they're like, well, Biden can't do anything about Omicron. What's your problem? Yes, but he pretended he could. That's the whole issue. He pretended that there was a federal solution. He even campaigned on the concept, I'm going to put a stop to COVID, is specifically what he said when he was running for office. Once he became the nominee, he continued to say it. Once he became the asterisk president, he continued to say it for months and months. Now all of a sudden, because, COVID is devolving towards even higher transmissibility, thankfully with the evolutionary attendance of lower mortality, thankfully, because of that, it's beginning to inoculate large numbers of people to the point where Fauci is even weighing in on it. Separate video, I'll be covering that basic premise, which is hilarious. A lot of people doing a 180 on mandates and so forth. Biden painted himself into a corner because he claimed that he could single-handedly tackle the issue. It was never true, and now he has to backpedal, which is why he's saying, well, I'm going to give more aid to the states. I'm going to do exactly what Trump did. But Biden shortages continue, and I'll get into this in a moment. First and foremost, though, keep in mind there will be a pinned comment down below if you're watching this video on YouTube with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind I make exclusive content on those platforms every day that don't go on YouTube. Partially because YouTube keeps purging people for having wrong think opinions, whether it's on COVID or politics or anything else under the sun. Link in the description, archived, of course. Let me ask the Biden shills this. I think there's a disconnect between the actual organic fan base. It's not a large one or even a fervent one, but I mean, there are still some people that are big-time fans of Biden. Most of them, it overlaps with Trump derangement syndrome. They're just happy that there are no mean tweets, except when Biden says that part of the population is evil for being unvaccinated or something. Why would the Washington Post have to create a fluff piece? It's propaganda, I'll get into that too, for the shortages, if the shortages didn't exist. Because I keep seeing shills, Democrat partisans, Biden's handful of loyal fans, saying, well, there are no shortages. I went to the store, everything's fine. And to be clear, we will be honest here, because this is, Styx Hexendom, this is Clankdom here. This is not, goofball central. In some cases, when people are seeing an empty shelf or two, they're being restocked. That happens all the time. It happened before COVID. It'll happen long after COVID. When you have, though, large numbers of people saying certain types of goods are frequently unavailable, underavailable, or that there are very large numbers of empty shelves to the point where they're single lining things to make it look more full, they're putting up little pieces of cardboard with printouts that look like products to make it look like the shelves aren't full at first glance. These are actual shortages. The Washington Post here, in their article, saying, well, here's some reasons why you're seeing shortages at the supermarket. And of course, none of them have to do with Biden fucked everything up. None of them have to do with the fact that several blue state governors in states with a lot of portage, especially California, have repeatedly made it difficult to offload goods. Nothing to do with the fact that a lot of truckers walked off the job because of attempts at vax mandates, thus reducing the available workforce. Nothing to do with the unfortunate feedback loop where if you have a port backup and one of those ships contains, let's say, components that are necessary to keep large, 18-wheeler trucks moving, and you don't unload it for a month. Over time, over that month, some of the trucks that would be on the road are taken out of commission and cannot be repaired. They cannot be safely used, or they can't be used at all. They're literally unable to function. So you got the trucker, but the truck's out of commission. And so it makes it more difficult even to transport those truck parts to the locations that you need them. This creates a very long-term feedback loop that is only now beginning to resolve. The shortages are real. Most often what you'll see are anecdotes from people. Some of them aren't shills. Some of them are just, they're living in their NIMBY bubble. So they say, well, my supermarket's fully stocked. I don't know what people are complaining about. There's no shortages. You live in one town or one part of one city in one very tiny bubble within the United States. This is the case in other countries too. What is true in New York City is not necessarily true in Los Angeles. What's true in Hoboken, New Jersey is not necessarily the case in Pierre, South Dakota. There are shortages still. That's because demand rose. The supply actually went down because of the port closures and the lack of truckers and so forth. Biden, again, much like with COVID in general, has claimed he'll solve the problem. Well, I'm trying to conference with the governors, and they're assuring me they're working the ports night and day. It's not working, quite clearly, for every American. This is Bidenomics in action. Biden advised the states, because he can't force them. Largely, this is a state-level response. That part, in defense of Biden, is true. But he advised them to do the lockdown thing. He advises them to push mandates. He openly coerces businesses into doing the same thing. His OSHA mandate, as of I think tomorrow, we're expecting several decisions Thursday, is probably going to be blown out of the water. Possibly not for healthcare workers, but in general, the general consensus is, based on the questioning in the first day of oral arguments, it is extremely unlikely that the government's larger OSHA mandate stands, which is good. It means less long-term shortages. If by some miracle his OSHA mandate does stand, you can expect disproportionately long-haul truckers and people like that who don't work with others most of the day. If I'm trucking, I'm alone in that cabin, probably. You know, you might have a clown prostitute in there once in a while with one of the truckers, but generally they're sitting there alone. The only contact they're having is through their radio with other truckers and shit. The shortages will get worse. But Biden should be hoping that his mandate falters before the Supreme Court and doesn't impact the larger economy. He should actually be hoping for a loss before the Supreme Court. Then he can just punt it and say, well, these evil conservatives that were appointed by Trump are blocking it because they want people to die. That's, by the way, what he will do. There will be an immediate reaction, and they'll talk about needing to expand the court, which won't happen. That's off the table. But they'll grandstand to their remaining fans, the small number of people that still like Biden. It's interesting, though, watching the differential between the organized propaganda apparatus, Washington Post and the rest of the legacy media, in coordination directly with the Biden asterisk administration. We know this. Oliver Darcy bragged about it with regards to economic news. I would assume shortages fall under that umbrella. To make fluff pieces for Biden to try to say it's not really his fault or the fault of the Democrats in some blue states like California throttling portage, throttling shipping, putting a lot of people out of work. It's not their fault. It's just supply rose. It's Omicron's fault. It's causing shipping delays. Well, yeah, because of the human response. Omicron itself, a virus does not go into the boardroom and make a conference call to all the employees and say, okay, slow down your output by 80%. It doesn't do that. It's people's response to the virus that has done this from day one. It falls under the umbrella of the Trump presidency too. When people say, well, Trump lost a lot of jobs, like Biden with his infographic there at the White House. No, he didn't. The lockdowns were state level. No federal response whatsoever. There was an advisory for a 2-week lockdown. That's the only thing Trump ever pushed, that and fast-tracking several vaccines. Other than that, he did nothing. Well, it's not his fault, nor is it Biden's credit that the number of cases over the next month is likely to peak at some point and then fall off. It's probably going to fall off significantly, but it won't be because of additional vaccinations or mandates or lockdowns. It'll be because Omicron burns through its host very quickly. Its transmissibility is so high, it's already, I think, in the course of, a month or so, had as many cases as Delta did in many months. So that's good news, by the way. At his State of the Union, Biden will probably take credit for that. And it'll be laughable, but his remaining fans will say, oh, well, he solved COVID. I guess he really did have a solution. Because they're brain dead. They're brain dead, and they're claiming that the shortages aren't even real. Some of them are. Or they justify them and say, no, 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 it's not Biden's fault, which is technically true, but at the same time, they're downplaying the severity. Why would the Washington Post even need this story to be made if the shortages weren't real? Then their headline would read, conspiracy theorists keep showing you old footage of shortages from fucking March and April of 2020 and passing it off as though it's Biden's fault. But here's the fact check. It's mostly false. Most of that video has nothing to do with it. Oh, and when they are current, it's just restocking the shelves. Well, I mean, the latter is partially true, but not generally true. Most of this that I witness myself when people send me pictures, when people send me videos, my assumption is it's not bullshit. And in many cases, it's not just one shelf. It's half the fucking store. In some areas that were more impacted by lockdowns, that will be the case. The Washington Post has just accidentally undercut all of the anecdotal shilling by Biden's remaining organic fan base. That's about all. Peace out.